Lady Beatrice poured Eleanor's medicines into the courtyard mud while the Duke watched. "My sister will restore this hospital," Adrian declared, "after you nearly bankrupted it." Glass bottles struck the stones and shattered beneath Beatrice's polished shoes. Amber tincture spread through the rainwater. Powdered willow bark turned the mud white, while a bottle of imported quinine, the last in St. Agnes Hospital, rolled in a slow circle before Beatrice crushed it beneath her heel. Beyond the iron gates, villagers pressed shoulder to shoulder. Some held feverish children. Others stared at Eleanor as if they no longer recognized the woman who had delivered their babies, dressed their burns, and sat beside their dying parents when no physician would travel so far into the Ashcombe countryside. Eleanor kept her face still. Only her hands betrayed her. They tightened around the fever ledger until its leather edge cut into her palm. The Duke of Ashcombe stood on the hospital steps in a dark riding coat, flanked by 2 estate guards and Mr. Harland, his chief steward. Adrian's expression carried none of the uncertainty she had seen at breakfast. Whatever doubts he had possessed were gone or had been buried before he entered the courtyard. He raised a sheet of paper bearing Eleanor's signature. £400 was transferred from the hospital medicine fund into a private account in Bristol, he said. "The order was authorised by my wife." A murmur moved through the crowd. £400 could have supplied St. Agnes for half a year. Eleanor looked at the document, but did not reach for it. "That is not my signature. It resembles every letter you have written on behalf of this estate." "Then allow me to examine the original account book." "You examined it long enough to alter it." The accusation landed harder than Eleanor expected. Adrian knew she had kept the hospital accounts without error for 5 years. He knew she had sold her mother's emerald brooch when the first winter fever exhausted their funds. He had once stood in the empty West Ward, taken her ink-stained hands in his, and promised that St. Agnes would always remain hers to govern. Now Lady Beatrice wore Eleanor's ring of hospital keys around her wrist. A violent cough broke from the villagers near the gate. A farmer sank to his knees, shaking so badly that his daughter could not hold him upright. Eleanor stepped toward him. One of the guards blocked her path. "Let me pass," she said. Adrian's jaw hardened. "You are no longer authorized to treat patients here. He may not survive the hour. Dr. Vale's treatments will continue under Beatrice's supervision." Eleanor turned sharply. "Dr. Vale is not here." Mr. Harland shifted his weight, but Adrian did not notice. "The ledger shows that he has continued prescribing," Beatrice said. "Unlike you, he understands that charity requires discipline." Eleanor looked at her husband. "Give me 1 hour with the hospital accounts and this ledger. If I cannot identify where the money went, I will surrender the keys willingly. You have already had months to conceal it." 1 hour, Adrian." His eyes met hers. For an instant, she saw the choice before him. He could delay the transfer. He could summon the trustees who had witnessed every purchase. He could ask why medicine was disappearing while unopened crates continued arriving through the east gate. Instead, he held out his hand. "You have 1 minute to surrender everything belonging to St. Agnes." Eleanor understood then that he had not come to discover the truth. He had come to make his decision irreversible before anyone could challenge it. She removed the final brass key from the chain at her waist. It opened the locked dispensary where dangerous medicines were stored separately from common remedies. As she placed it in Beatrice's palm, the fever ledger slipped from beneath her arm. It struck the stones and fell open. A blood-stained page fluttered loose. Beatrice reached for it, but Eleanor was faster. She saw 17 names written beneath a single heading, patients assigned to Dr. Nathaniel Vale. 3 had been admitted that morning. Beside each name was the same prescription, a blue tonic, 20 drops at sundown. Eleanor's breath caught. She had never approved a blue tonic. More troubling still, Nathaniel Vale had not entered St. Agnes in 2 months. He had vanished after telling Eleanor that several fever cases did not behave like any natural illness he had encountered. His cottage had been found locked, his horse left in its stall, and his medical bag missing. Adrian had dismissed the disappearance as a physician fleeing his debts, yet someone had continued writing prescriptions in Vale's name every night since. Beatrice snatched the page from Eleanor's hand. "A copying error," she said. "Then let me see the bottle. There is no reason for you to see anything." From an upstairs window came the crash of a metal tray. A nurse screamed for help. One bell rang, then another, until the entire fever ward seemed to cry out above them. Eleanor looked up and saw a pale hand strike the glass from inside. "That tonic is harming them," she said. "You must stop the evening doses." Beatrice's fingers closed around the dispensary key. "The patients are no longer your concern." Adrian ordered the guards to escort Eleanor back to Ashcombe Hall. As they led her through the crowd, she noticed a hospital porter pushing an empty medicine crate toward Mr. Harlan's wagon. A black wax seal clung to its side, the same seal pressed into the supposed bank order bearing her forged signature. The missing money, the false prescriptions, and Dr. Vale's disappearance were connected, and the accusation against Eleanor had not merely removed her from St. Agnes. It had placed every patient and every record that could expose the truth under Beatrice's control. The guards released Eleanor only after the carriage doors closed around her. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched St. Agnes disappear behind the trees. The fever bells continued ringing until the wheels reached the northern road. No one had ordered them silenced. Across from her sat Mrs. Finch, the hospital's senior nurse. Her grey cloak was damp, and the left sleeve bore a dark streak of blood. "Lady Beatrice dismissed me before your carriage left," she said. She said, "My loyalty made me dangerous." Eleanor looked toward the driver's partition. "Did anyone see you enter?" "Only the guard who put me here. He believes I am accompanying you as a servant." Mrs. Finch opened her medical satchel. Inside lay a child's brass bed tag marked with the number 23 and a small glass bottle filled with blue liquid. "I took it from the treatment cart," she whispered. "Why, Doe?" Eleanor held the bottle toward the carriage lamp. A cloudy thread drifted through the tonic. It was too thick for fever medicine and left an oily ring against the glass. Was this given to every patient? Only those listed beneath Dr. Vale's name. How many received it today? 17. 6 collapsed within minutes. Eleanor removed the stopper, but did not smell the contents directly. Her father had taught her never to trust an unfamiliar medicine merely because it arrived in a physician's bottle. Instead, she placed one drop on the silver clasp of her glove. The metal darkened. Mrs. Finch inhaled sharply. "What does that mean?" "It contains a mineral compound, perhaps antimony, perhaps something mixed with it. In a controlled amount, such substances can induce vomiting. In repeated doses, they can weaken the heart. Then the fever may not be killing them. Pa, not by itself." The carriage lurched over a rut. Eleanor closed the bottle and wrapped it in linen. Her father, Dr. Samuel Whitmore, had allowed her to work beside him from the age of 12. She had learned to record every dose, compare symptoms across households, and separate illness from the effects of treatment. When he died, he left her neither a title nor a fortune large enough to impress society. He left her 30 years of case journals and the conviction that careless records could kill as surely as careless hands. St. Agnes had been built upon that conviction. 5 winters earlier, fever had taken 19 tenants in 6 weeks because the nearest charitable hospital lay 30 miles away. Eleanor had persuaded Adrian to convert an abandoned granary, then used £1,200 from her marriage settlement to purchase beds, instruments, and medicines. She had established numbered patient tags, so names could never be exchanged. She had required nurses to record each dose immediately, rather than at the end of a shift. Deaths from winter illness had fallen by more than half. Now, the same system was being used to place false prescriptions beneath the name of a missing physician. Mrs. Finch touched the brass tag. "This belonged to Jacob Bell, the boy who rang for you from the upstairs window." Lady Beatrice ordered his bed, changed from 23 to 11. "Why?" "She said the fever ward should appear orderly when the trustees inspect it tomorrow." Eleanor turned the tag over. A crescent-shaped stain marked the back. Was the blue tonic spilled on this? No, Jacob was wearing it when he vomited. Then keep it separate from the bottle. It may prove which patient received which dose. Mrs. Finch nodded and returned it to the satchel. The carriage entered the gates of Ashcombe Hall shortly before dusk. 2 footmen waited beneath the portico, but neither met Eleanor's eyes. Behind them stood Mrs. Wren, the housekeeper, who had served the family since Adrian's childhood. "My lady," Mrs. Wren said carefully, "His Grace has ordered that your correspondence be withheld and that you remain in the West Apartments until the hospital trustees meet." Mrs. Finch stiffened. "That is imprisonment. It is humiliation dressed in household language." Eleanor replied. She stepped down from the carriage. Mr. Harlan's wagon stood beside the service entrance. The empty medicine crate from St. Agnes had already been unloaded. Its black wax seal remained visible beneath a canvas sheet. Eleanor walked toward it. A footman moved to stop her, but she turned with such calm authority that he hesitated. "I am forbidden from treating patients," she said. "I have not been forbidden from walking through my husband's courtyard." She lifted the canvas. The crate bore the name of Bellwether and Sons, an apothecary supplier in Bristol. Eleanor knew the company. St. Agnes had ordered bandages from it once, 3 years earlier, but never medicine. The firm had lost its pharmaceutical license after selling diluted laudanum to a naval infirmary. More disturbing was the delivery date burned into the wood. The crate had arrived 11 days before the first fever case. Mrs. Wren appeared beside Eleanor and lowered her voice. "Mr. Harland ordered 3 such crates placed in the old ice house. He said they contained wine for the Duke's table." "Who received them?" Lady Beatrice signed the delivery slips. Eleanor let the canvas fall. At last, the shape of the danger began to sharpen. Someone had purchased unlicensed medicine before the outbreak, hidden it on the estate, and later entered prescriptions under Dr. Vale's name. Yet the £400 she was accused of stealing had supposedly vanished only 6 days ago. The official accusation could not explain how the scheme had been funded weeks earlier. Eleanor turned to Mrs. Wren. "Can you send a message without using the estate post?" "To whom?" "Mr. Thomas Reed, the solicitor who witnessed the hospital trust." Mrs. Wren glanced toward the windows. "His Grace will be furious. He may control my rooms and withhold my letters, but he will not use my silence to endanger those patients." She placed the blue bottle in Mrs. Finch's hands. "Hide this where neither Beatrice nor Harland can reach it. Until I know whom we can trust, no one must learn we possess a sample." A door slammed behind them. Mr. Harland stood at the service entrance, staring not at Eleanor, but at the satchel beneath Mrs. Finch's cloak. Then he called for the guards to search it. Mrs. Finch pulled her cloak tightly around the satchel. Mr. Harland crossed the courtyard with 2 guards behind him. "Lady Beatrice has reported missing hospital property. Every bag brought from St. Agnes must be examined." Eleanor stepped between him and the nurse. "Mrs. Finch was placed in my carriage by the Duke's guard. If she is carrying stolen property, then your own men allowed its removal." Harland's gaze flickered toward the windows of Ashcombe Hall. "Stand aside, Your Grace. You may search the satchel after you provide a written inventory of everything you take." "That is unnecessary. It becomes necessary when the man accusing me controls the evidence." One guard looked away. The other loosened his grip on his belt. Harland reached for the satchel himself. Mrs. Finch recoiled, striking the carriage door. The impact jarred the clasp open. Rolled bandages, scissors, and a folded apron spilled onto the stones. The blue bottle was not among them. Eleanor did not allow herself to look toward Mrs. Wren, who had quietly removed it while Harland crossed the courtyard. Harland searched every pocket. He found the brass bed tag and held it up. "Hospital property. It identifies a poisoned patient," Eleanor said. "Return it. It identifies a bed." "Then why did Lady Beatrice order that patient moved and renumbered?" The question stopped him. Eleanor took the tag from his fingers before he recovered. "You may tell my husband that I will surrender this to the trustees tomorrow. Not to you." Harland's face remained composed, but a pulse beat visibly beside his jaw. "You will not attend that meeting. Then the trustees will wonder why the founder of St. Agnes was excluded from proceedings concerning its funds." For the first time that day, Eleanor saw fear behind his politeness. Harland ordered the guards to escort Mrs. Finch to the servants' wing. As they left, his attention remained fixed on Eleanor. He no longer regarded her as a disgraced wife. He regarded her as an obstacle. Inside the West apartments, Eleanor found her desk drawers sealed with strips of red wax. Her father's journals had been removed from the shelves. Even the small medicine cabinet beside the fireplace stood open and empty. Lady Beatrice had already begun erasing her authority from the house. On the writing table lay a document announcing that all St. Agnes employees were henceforth answerable to Beatrice. Adrian's signature appeared beneath the order, granting his sister control over appointments, supplies, patient records, and access to the dispensary. Eleanor read it twice. By giving Beatrice complete authority, Adrian had placed every witness and every piece of evidence under the control of the woman who had received the suspicious crates. A soft knock came from the adjoining dressing room. Mrs. Wren entered carrying fresh linens. Hidden between them was the blue bottle. "I placed it inside the old warming pan," she said. "The guards searched Mrs. Finch, but not me." Eleanor exhaled. "You have taken a serious risk. So did every mother who trusted St. Agnes with her child." Mrs. Wren produced another object, a narrow strip of cream paper tied around the bottle's neck. It bore the number 47 in blue pencil. "I found this on the floor of Mr. Harland's wagon." Eleanor recognized the paper immediately. It was not a manufacturer's label. St. Agnes used such numbered strips when receiving expensive medicines. The supply clerk wrote the corresponding invoice number in a separate book so that no bottle could be substituted after delivery. "Invoice 47, Eleanor murmured. "If Beatrice has the invoice book, she can change it. She can change the writing. She cannot change the paper." 3 years earlier, Eleanor had ordered a private watermark pressed into all hospital labels after a supplier delivered counterfeit laudanum. When held near the fire, the paper revealed a tiny image of a bell beneath the fibers. The mark appeared now. This bottle had entered St. Agnes through its official receiving system. Someone inside the hospital had accepted it. Eleanor gave the label back to Mrs. Wren. "Sew this into the hem of your apron. The bottle may be dismissed as something we filled ourselves. The label connects it to the hospital inventory." A key turned in the outer door. Adrian entered without knocking. His gaze moved from Eleanor to the unsealed writing desk and then to Mrs. Wren. "Leave us." The housekeeper bowed and carried the linens away. Adrian waited until the door closed. "Harland says you obstructed a lawful search. Harland has no lawful authority to search the Duchess of Ashcombe. You are accused of theft, accused by the man whose wagon carried unlicensed medicine from St. Agnes." Adrian's expression tightened. "Those crates contained ordinary supplies. They arrived 11 days before the fever began. How could you possibly know that? The date was burned into the wood." For a moment, he said nothing. Eleanor saw him calculate the discrepancy. If the hospital fund had been emptied 6 days ago, the earlier shipment could not have been purchased with the stolen money attributed to her. "Harland may have ordered the supplies on credit," he said at last, "from an apothecary forbidden to sell medicine. Beatrice assured me the supplier's difficulties were resolved. Did you verify that?" The silence between them became an answer. Eleanor crossed to the window. In the courtyard below, stable boys harnessed horses to a closed black carriage. "Where is your sister going?" "She is returning to St. Agnes." "At this hour?" "She intends to review the records before the trustees arrive." "To review them or replace them?" Adrian's eyes hardened. "You see conspiracy because you cannot accept that you failed. And you see innocence because admitting the truth would mean you handed the hospital to the wrong person." The words struck him. His face changed, not with belief, but with wounded pride. He took the key to Eleanor's apartments from his pocket and locked the door from the outside. Below, Lady Beatrice entered the black carriage with Mr. Harland. A leather case containing the hospital seals rested between them. Mrs. Wren appeared moments later in the shadow of the stable arch. She opened her apron just enough for Eleanor to see the hidden label. Then, without waiting for permission, the housekeeper climbed onto the narrow rear step of Beatrice's departing carriage. Lady Beatrice believed Eleanor had been confined without evidence or allies. She did not know that invoice 47 was already beyond her reach. The black carriage vanished beyond the gates with Mrs. Wren clinging to its rear step. Eleanor remained at the window until the last wheel disappeared into the darkness. Then she tested the door. Locked. Adrian had stationed a footman outside, but the West apartments had once belonged to his grandmother, who disliked being observed by servants. A narrow bell passage connected the dressing room to the linen stairs. Eleanor opened the panel behind the wardrobe. She had taken only 3 steps into the passage when someone whispered her name. A kitchen maid crouched in the darkness, holding a candle with both hands. Lucy Hale was 17 and had volunteered at St. Agnes during the previous winter. "Your Grace, please come quickly. My brother has collapsed." "Where is he?" "In the laundry room. Mr. Harland's assistant told us not to move him." Eleanor followed her downstairs. Ben Hale lay on a table between baskets of wet linen. His skin was pale rather than flushed, and sweat soaked his collar. Each breath came in a shallow gasp. A blue stain marked the corner of his mouth. "Did he visit the hospital today?" Eleanor asked. Lucy nodded. "He delivered coal. Lady Beatrice gave him a tonic because he complained of nausea." "How long before he collapsed?" "Perhaps half an hour." Eleanor checked his pulse. It was weak and irregular. The symptoms matched those Mrs. Finch had described, but Ben had shown no signs of fever before taking the tonic. That distinction mattered. The illness and the medicine were not the same threat. "Bring warm water and the charcoal from the kitchen stove," Eleanor said. "Not ash, charcoal." The laundry mistress hesitated. "His Grace forbade you from treating anyone. If we wait for permission, this boy may die." Eleanor crushed the charcoal into warm water and gave Ben small spoonfuls whenever he could swallow. She kept him awake, listened to his breathing, and ordered blankets placed beneath rather than over him, so his body would not overheat. Minutes passed. Ben vomited once, then again. Blue liquid stained the basin. His pulse remained weak, but the pauses between beats shortened. A physician would be needed if he survived the night. For now, Eleanor had done what she could. "Save everything in that basin," she told Lucy. "Do not allow anyone to wash it away." The girl stared at her. "Why?" "Because your brother was not sick until someone treated him." Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Lady Beatrice entered with Adrian and 2 servants. Her gown was damp from the journey, but not a strand of hair had escaped its jeweled pins. "What have you done?" she demanded. "I prevented your tonic from killing him." Beatrice looked at the basin. "The boy was already ill. He had no fever. You are not a physician. Neither are you." Adrian went to Ben and touched his forehead. "He is cold." "His pulse was failing," Eleanor said. The charcoal absorbed part of what remained in his stomach. Beatrice gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "You forced soot into a servant, and now call yourself his savior." Ben stirred on the table. His eyes opened. "Lucy?" His sister seized his hand and began to cry. The laundry servants exchanged relieved glances, but Beatrice turned immediately to Adrian. "I ordered warm water before we left St. Agnes," she said. "That, combined with the Duke's excellent household care, has revived him." Eleanor looked at her husband. He had watched Eleanor prepare the charcoal. He had heard her instructions. Yet Beatrice's claim offered him an easier truth, one in which his sister remained competent and his wife remained disobedient. "Eleanor should not have left her rooms," he said. Lucy rose. "But your Grace, the Duchess." Eleanor caught the girl's wrist before she could continue. If Lucy challenged the Duke publicly, Beatrice would dismiss her and separate her from Ben. "Your brother needs you," Eleanor said quietly. Beatrice noticed the exchange. Her eyes moved from Lucy to the unwashed basin. "Dispose of that filth," she ordered. "No," Eleanor said. The room fell silent. Beatrice's smile disappeared. "You no longer govern St. Agnes, and you do not govern my brother's household. I am still Duchess of Ashcombe. Nothing connected to the poisoning of a servant will be destroyed until a magistrate or independent physician examines it." Adrian looked toward the basin. "Poisoning is a serious accusation. So is theft." Eleanor pointed to the blue residue. "Send for Sir Matthew Copley. He treated your father and has no connection to St. Agnes. Let him examine Ben, the tonic, and the records before tomorrow's meeting." Beatrice's face tightened for only an instant. "We cannot summon a retired physician across flooded roads because a laundry boy fainted," she said. "The trustees will arrive at 10. They require Adrian's attention. He need only write one message." Eleanor looked directly at her husband. There it was again, another moment in which Adrian could choose examination over pride. He reached toward the writing desk. Before his fingers touched the paper, a hospital messenger burst into the laundry room without waiting to be announced. Rain streamed from his coat. "Your Grace, St. Agnes requires every available carriage. The fever has reached the nursery cottages." Eleanor's heart contracted. Nearly 40 children lived there. The messenger continued. "Lady Beatrice's new head nurse has ordered the blue tonic given to them before midnight." "Stop the doses," Eleanor said. The messenger turned instinctively toward her. Beatrice stepped between them. "You will obey the hospital's lawful director." Adrian stared at the blue stain in the basin, then at Ben Hale, struggling to breathe. Eleanor placed the pen before him. "Send for Sir Matthew," she said. "If I am wrong, he will prove it before every trustee tomorrow. If I am right, children may die while you protect your sister from a question. Adrian picked up the pen, but he did not yet lower it to the paper. Adrian held the pen above the paper while the messenger waited. One line to Sir Matthew Copley could settle the question before morning. One independent examination could determine whether Ben Hale had collapsed from fever or from Beatrice's tonic. Lady Beatrice moved closer to her brother. If you summon another physician now, every trustee will believe you have lost confidence in me, she said. The hospital will descend into panic. No, children are already in danger, Eleanor replied. They are frightened because you have spread accusations without proof. The proof is breathing on that table. Beatrice lowered her voice. Adrian, she is using a servant's illness to recover the authority she lost. If you reward this defiance, she will challenge every order you give. The pen stopped moving. Eleanor saw the familiar wound behind her husband's eyes. Adrian could tolerate disagreement in private, but not the suggestion that he lacked command. Since inheriting the dukedom at 23, he had lived beneath comparisons to a father who had ruled Ashcombe through fear. Every objection sounded to him like a test of whether he was strong enough to bear the title. Beatrice knew it, and she had chosen her words precisely. Adrian set the pen down. No outside physician will be summoned tonight. The messenger glanced toward Eleanor, horrified. Then forbid the tonic until morning, she said. Beatrice will determine the appropriate treatment. You watched what it did to Ben. I watched a boy recover after becoming ill. You watched me save him. His expression hardened. Enough. Adrian pulled a second document from inside his coat. It bore the hospital trust seal and spaces for 2 signatures. At tomorrow's meeting, the trustees will be asked to confirm Beatrice as permanent governor of St. Agnes. Until then, I am granting her emergency authority over every hospital employee, shipment, and treatment. Eleanor stared at the paper. That authority belongs to the trustees. As patron of the estate, I may exercise it during a public emergency. You may issue temporary orders. You cannot alter the trust. I am not altering it. You are placing the accused person in control of the records that could prove the accusation. Adrian signed his name. The scratch of the pen seemed louder than the fever bells had been. Beatrice added her signature beneath his. She did not look triumphant. She looked relieved. That frightened Eleanor more. The document was not merely a gesture of family loyalty. Beatrice had needed it. The messenger received orders to return to St. Agnes and tell the staff that Lady Beatrice possessed the Duke's full authority. No treatment was to be delayed without her permission. As he turned to leave, Eleanor caught his sleeve. What is your name? Oh, Daniel Price. Your Grace. Do you know the nursery cottages? My sister lives in the 3rd cottage. Then listen carefully. If any child becomes cold, weak, or begins vomiting blue liquid after the tonic, do not give another dose. Keep the bottle and the bed tag together. Ka, 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 ka. Beatrice stepped forward. You will disregard those instructions. Daniel bowed, but his eyes remained on Eleanor. I understand, Your Grace. He ran into the rain. Beatrice watched him go. That man will be dismissed by morning. No, Adrian said. We cannot remove staff merely for listening. It was a small objection, but it came too late to matter. Beatrice had obtained the signed authority she needed. She ordered 2 servants to carry Ben into an isolated room. Lucy attempted to follow, but Harland appeared in the corridor and blocked her. No visitors, he said. The boy may be contagious. He was not contagious when you sent him to deliver coal, Eleanor said. Harland ignored her. When Lucy protested, Beatrice dismissed her from the household for insolence. Eleanor took the girl's shaking hands. Go to Mrs. Finch. Tell her I sent you. Do not return to your cottage tonight. But Ben, I will not leave him alone. The promise crossed a boundary Eleanor had not permitted herself to name until then. She was no longer trying to persuade Adrian to restore her place beside him. She was protecting those his decision had placed in danger, even if doing so meant standing openly against him. Lucy left through the servants' passage before Harland could stop her. Beatrice ordered Eleanor returned to the west apartments under guard. As the footman led her away, she heard Harland asking where the basin had gone. It was no longer beside the laundry table. Mrs. Wren had taken it. In the west corridor, Eleanor found the housekeeper waiting with a covered pail and her apron torn at the hem. The numbered label was gone. Beatrice searched the hospital invoice book, Mrs. Wren whispered. She removed page 47 and burned it. Did you see what was written there? 3 crates of fever tonic, purchased 6 weeks ago. The payment was entered under the name N. Vale. 6 weeks ago, Dr. Vale had disappeared 2 months earlier, yet someone had used his name to purchase the tonic before the fever began. Who witnessed the entry? Eleanor asked. A young supply clerk named Peter Moss. Harland ordered him locked in the hospital cellar when he refused to rewrite the date. Eleanor looked toward the guard at the end of the passage. Where is the label? I gave it to Daniel Price before he returned to St. Agnes. He promised to hide it with his sister. The evidence was now moving beyond Beatrice's immediate reach, but so was the danger. Peter Moss knew who had received the crates. If Harland realized the clerk had spoken to Mrs. Wren, he would not leave him alive in that cellar. A distant pounding rose from the courtyard gates. A rider shouted for the Duke. Eleanor crossed to the nearest window. Below, a man had collapsed over his horse's neck. Behind him, the sky above the nursery cottages glowed orange. "The cottages are burning," someone cried. Then the rider forced out the words that turned every servant silent. The children were locked inside after they refused Lady Beatrice's medicine. Adrian reached the courtyard before the rider fell from his saddle. "How many children?" he demanded. 32, the man gasped. The doors were barred under quarantine orders. Fire has taken the first cottage, and the wind is carrying sparks toward the others. Adrian shouted for every carriage, water cart, and able-bodied servant to be assembled. No one moved. Harland had sent the estate horses to St. Agnes to collect medicine shipments. Beatrice had ordered the water carts stationed beside the hospital in case the fever wards required cleansing. Most of the healthy labourers had been confined to their cottages after refusing the blue tonic. The authority Adrian had placed in his sister's hands had stripped him of the people and equipment needed to answer the emergency. Eleanor came down the stairs, carrying her father's leather case. "You are confined to your rooms," Adrian said, "and children are confined inside burning cottages. This is not the moment to challenge me. No, it is the moment to decide whether your pride matters more than their lives." Another orange flare rose beyond the trees. Adrian looked away first. "Take my carriage," he ordered. "I will take the kitchen wagon. Your carriage cannot carry water barrels." Eleanor turned to the servants. "Soak blankets and load every ladder. Bring vinegar, clean cloth, and the charcoal sacks. Anyone who fears punishment may remain here." Not one servant remained behind. Adrian mounted the rider's horse and led the wagons toward the nursery cottages. Eleanor travelled beside Mrs. Wren and Mrs. Finch, who had escaped the servants' wing through the laundry passage. They smelled smoke before reaching the first field. The nearest cottage was already lost. Flames poured from its roof as men struck at the barred door with axes. 3 other cottages burned along their outer walls. Children screamed behind shuttered windows while their mothers tried to tear away the boards with bare hands. Eleanor jumped from the wagon before it stopped. "Break the windows first," she called. "Get the children below the smoke." A labourer pointed toward the lane. The doors were chained from outside. Adrian stared at the iron chains bearing the Ashcombe crest. "My order was quarantine," he said. "Not this." Beatrice's emergency authority made the distinction meaningless, Eleanor replied. She wrapped a wet cloth around her face and entered through a broken window. Smoke turned the room black. A small hand caught her skirt. Eleanor found 2 girls beneath a table and pushed them toward the opening. Behind them, a boy lay motionless beside an overturned bottle of blue tonic. She dragged him outside. His skin was cold. His lips had begun to darken. Mrs. Finch knelt beside them. "The smoke? Ho? No." He took the tonic before the fire. Eleanor opened the boy's mouth and detected the same metallic scent she had found in the bottle. Then she noticed scorch marks running from the hearth toward a broken medicine crate. The tonic had spilled across the floor. It had burned with a pale blue flame. "The mixture contained spirits," she said. They stored the crates beside open fires. The blaze had not appeared from nowhere. Beatrice's orders had placed flammable tonic inside crowded cottages, locked the occupants in, and removed the water carts. Eleanor gave the boy charcoal water, while Mrs. Finch supported his head. He coughed, expelled blue liquid, and began breathing again. A beam collapsed inside the second cottage. Adrian rushed toward the door, but Eleanor caught his arm. "The roof will fall. My tenants are inside, and charging into the flames will not free them." She pointed to the connecting washyard. "The rear wall is thin brick. Bring the wagon horses and pull it down with chains." Adrian obeyed. The wall collapsed outward, opening a path beneath the smoke. One by one, children and mothers crawled into the yard. Adrian carried the final child out, seconds before the roof fell. By dawn, the fire was contained. No child had died, but 11 were badly burned or poisoned. The first cottage had been reduced to its foundation, and the hospital's nursery ward was too crowded to receive the survivors. Eleanor ordered the Ashcombe ballroom converted into a temporary infirmary. Beatrice arrived as the first injured child was carried through the hall. "You cannot bring fever into this house," she said. "You brought poison into theirs." Beatrice turned to Adrian. The fire was sabotage. Eleanor incited the villagers against quarantine. Adrian's coat was black with soot. A burn crossed his right hand, and blood stained his sleeve where a falling tile had cut him. He looked at the child in Eleanor's arms, then at the iron chain a labourer had brought from the cottages. His family crest was stamped into the lock. "Who ordered the doors barred?" he asked. Harland answered before Beatrice could speak. A junior hospital clerk misunderstood the instructions. "Which clerk?" "Peter Moss." Eleanor's gaze sharpened. Peter was locked in the hospital cellar. He could not have chained the cottages unless someone had released him, and Harland clearly did not expect him to contradict the story. "Bring Peter here," Adrian ordered. Harland bowed. "At once." But he did not leave. A church bell began ringing in the village. 3 strokes, a pause, then 3 more. It was the signal for a death within an afflicted household. The bell continued until it had sounded 12 times. A second rider arrived, carrying a sealed notice from the county magistrate. Because the fever had spread beyond Ashcombe land, the estate roads would be closed at noon. No person, medicine, document, or witness would be permitted to leave until a royal medical inspector arrived. Adrian broke the seal. His face drained of colour. The Crown had suspended his authority over St. Agnes and demanded the complete fever ledger, supply accounts, and treatment records by noon. Beatrice still controlled all 3. Eleanor looked toward the eastern sky. They had less than 6 hours to reach the hospital, rescue Peter Moss, and secure the records before Beatrice could destroy them. Then Mrs. Wren searched her apron and whispered, "The blue label is gone." Daniel Price had carried invoice 47 back to St. Agnes, and Daniel's sister lived in the cottage that had burned to the ground. "The label was not in the cottage," Lucy Hale said. She stood at the ballroom doors, her face streaked with soot. Beside her was Daniel Price, supporting a young woman with a burned arm. "My sister escaped through the rear window," Daniel explained. "I found her near the orchard." Eleanor looked at him. "Invoice 47? Daniel reached beneath his coat and produced Jacob Bell's brass bed tag. At first, Eleanor saw only the crescent-shaped stain. Then, Daniel slid his thumbnail beneath the thin metal backing. The numbered label had been folded inside. "Mrs. Wren told me to hide it somewhere Beatrice would mistake for ordinary hospital property," he said. Eleanor pressed the backing closed. "From this moment, do not let the tag leave your sight." Mrs. Finch witnessed the bottle. "Mrs. Wren found the label. You received it from her and concealed it here. Each of you must remember that chain." Adrian entered the ballroom while she spoke. A surgeon from the village was wrapping his burned hand. "The county notice gives us until noon," he said. "I am going to St. Agnes." "So am I. The roads are dangerous." "They became dangerous when you signed Beatrice's order." He dismissed the surgeon and lowered his voice. "I did not know she would lock those doors." "You knew she refused an independent examination. You knew the dates did not match. You signed, anyway." Adrian looked across the ballroom. Every sofa and banquet table had become a hospital bed. Servants carried water beneath chandeliers that had once illuminated royal guests. Mrs. Finch directed volunteers while Eleanor's numbered tags ensured that medicines followed the correct patients. "How did you organize all this before dawn?" he asked. "The same way I organized St. Agnes for 5 years." He looked at the supply sheets, the treatment stations, and the women who obeyed Eleanor without waiting for his permission. "What else did I fail to see? This is not the hour for your remorse. If you wish to help, you will follow my conditions." His expression tightened, but he nodded. No one enters the hospital alone. No record is removed without 2 witnesses. Peter Moss comes out first, and Beatrice is not warned that we possess the label. You are giving orders to a duke. I am setting terms for a man asking for my expertise. After a long silence, Adrian said, agreed. They left Ashcombe Hall in 2 wagons, with Mrs. Finch, Daniel, 4 labourers, and the county constable. The magistrate's notice allowed the constable to secure medical records, but not to arrest Beatrice without evidence of a crime. St. Agnes appeared strangely quiet. No bells rang. The main doors stood open, and smoke drifted from the records office. Eleanor ran inside. Harland was feeding account books into the stove. At the sight of the constable, he dropped the iron poker. Fever contamination, he said. Lady Beatrice ordered the infected papers destroyed. Put out the fire, Eleanor told the labourers. They dragged the stove away from the wall and smothered the burning books with wet blankets. Most had already blackened beyond recognition. Adrian seized Harland by the coat. Where is Peter Moss? I released him before dawn. Then why did you accuse him of chaining the cottages? Harland's eyes moved toward Beatrice, who stood at the end of the corridor, wearing a white hospital apron. My brother is injured, she said calmly. Release Mr. Harland. Adrian did not obey. Eleanor went to the cellar. The door was locked, but the dispensary key she had surrendered now hung from Beatrice's wrist. Open it, Eleanor said. No. The constable stepped forward. The Crown requires every hospital room to be inspected. Beatrice smiled. Then break the door and explain why you released a fever patient into the county. A faint tapping came from beneath the floor. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. Peter was alive. The labourers forced the lock. They found him bound beside empty blue bottles, barely conscious but without fever. A bruise covered one side of his face. In his shirt pocket was the stub of a blue pencil. Mrs. Finch carried him upstairs while Eleanor examined the cellar. The discarded bottles bore no printed manufacturer's name, but their corks were stamped with a small crown split through the centre. She had seen that mark before. Her father's journals contained a warning about a mineral tonic sold 20 years earlier under the name Crown's Restorative. It had been banned after causing heart failure that resembled the final stage of marsh fever. You knew, Eleanor said to Beatrice. You selected a poison whose symptoms could be blamed on the outbreak. Beatrice's face did not change. A dead man's journals are not proof. Peter stirred on the stretcher. Invoice 47, he whispered. Daniel produced the brass tag. Mrs. Wren's hidden label was matched against the pencil stub found on Peter. The blue pigment was identical, and Peter recognized his own number. I recorded 3 crates, he said weakly. Dr. Vale did not order them. Mr. Harland brought me a note bearing the doctor's seal. Where is that note? Eleanor asked. In the fever ledger, beneath the binding. For the first time, Beatrice lost control of her expression. Eleanor opened the ledger and pressed along its spine. A narrow compartment, separated from the leather. Inside lay a folded order bearing Vale's seal and a second list of payments. Adrian read the first name, £400 transferred to Nathaniel Vale. The same sum Eleanor was accused of stealing, Mrs. Finch said. The payment list connected the missing hospital money to the false prescriptions. It also contained dates, carriage numbers, and Harland's initials. Adrian looked at his sister as though he had never seen her before. I gave you the hospital, he said. Yes, Beatrice replied. And now you will help me keep it. She pulled a small pistol from beneath her apron. Before anyone could move, Harland threw the burning stove door open. Smoke and flame surged into the corridor. Beatrice seized the ledger from Eleanor's hands and backed toward the medicine store. Then she fired into the ceiling. Glass rained down as she disappeared behind the iron door with the ledger and locked herself inside. Flames licked beneath the iron door of the medicine store. Beatrice! Adrian struck the panels with his uninjured hand. Open this door. A sharp crack sounded from inside. Then came the smell of burning leather. She is destroying the ledger, Eleanor said. The labourers carried a wooden bench from the waiting room and drove it against the lock. On the third blow, the frame splintered. Smoke rolled into the corridor. Beatrice was gone. A rear delivery hatch stood open behind her, leading to the lane where Harland's wagon had been waiting. On the floor lay the fever ledger, its pages burning inside a metal tray. Eleanor smothered the flames with her cloak. The hidden order and payment list had vanished. Most of the treatment pages crumbled when she touched them. Only the thick leather cover remained intact. Adrian stared at the ruined book. I had the truth in my hands. You had it before today, Eleanor said. You chose not to look. The words struck harder than any accusation Beatrice could have made. The constable searched the rear lane, but Beatrice and Harland had already escaped. Their wagon tracks joined the main road, less than an hour before the county closure took effect. At 11, a royal medical inspector arrived at St. Agnes, with 2 magistrates and 6 armed officers. Sir Julian Mercer was a narrow-faced man who spoke quietly enough that everyone leaned closer to hear him. He examined the burned records, the empty bottles, and Peter Moss's injuries. Then one officer brought in a locked chest discovered beneath Eleanor's former desk. Inside were 12 unopened bottles of blue tonic, £400 in banknotes, and a packet of letters addressed to a Bristol apothecary. Every letter bore Eleanor's signature. Beatrice had prepared her defence before taking the hospital. Sir Julian looked at Eleanor. Do you possess the key to this chest? I surrendered all hospital keys yesterday. Several nurses state that this desk belonged exclusively to you. It did, until the Duke transferred my authority to his sister. Not. The inspector turned to Adrian. Was your wife accused before or after the medicine was discovered? Before. On what evidence? A bank order bearing her signature. Where is that order? Adrian looked toward the burned records office. Harland had taken it. Sir Julian ordered Eleanor placed under temporary guard. She was not imprisoned, but she could not leave the hospital or speak privately with witnesses. By noon, Beatrice returned. She arrived in a hired carriage with a solicitor and a clean duplicate of the fever ledger. Harland was not with her. My brother's wife attempted to destroy the original records after her theft was exposed, she told the magistrates. Fortunately, I ordered a copy prepared for the trustees. Her duplicate named Dr. Vale as the physician responsible for every blue tonic prescription. It also claimed that Eleanor had personally purchased the medicine and concealed the cost under false patient accounts. Beatrice appeared not as a fleeing criminal, but as the woman who had preserved the only surviving record. Peter Moss tried to speak, but her solicitor produced a dismissal notice describing him as a clerk caught altering invoices. Mrs. Finch was accused of stealing medicine. Daniel was called an agitator whose family had resisted quarantine. One by one, Beatrice turned Eleanor's witnesses into suspected accomplices. Then she displayed the Duke's signed order, granting her complete authority. His Grace examined the evidence and removed his wife, the solicitor said. Lady Beatrice merely acted upon his judgment. Every face turned toward Adrian. He could protect his title by insisting he had been deceived. Beatrice had clearly expected him to do exactly that. Instead, he stepped before the magistrates. My judgment was not evidence, he said. It was pride. Beatrice's smile faded. Adrian continued. My wife asked me to inspect the accounts. I refused. She asked for an independent physician. After a servant collapsed, I refused again. I saw that the shipment dates contradicted the accusation, yet I signed authority over St. Agnes to my sister because I preferred obedience to truth. Sir Julian studied him. Did that authority permit Lady Beatrice to lock families inside their cottages? No, but it gave her the power to issue the order in my name. The admission would reach Parliament. Adrian could lose his county appointment, his hospital patronage, and the Crown's confidence. It did not prove Eleanor innocent, but it destroyed Beatrice's claim that the Duke had verified the evidence. Eleanor looked at him without gratitude. Truth spoken late remained necessary, but it did not erase the price of his earlier silence. Sir Julian allowed Eleanor one question for Beatrice. Eleanor studied the duplicate ledger. The handwriting was neat, the dates aligned. Every patient seemed accounted for. Then she noticed that Jacob Bell appeared under bed 11 from the day of his admission. Beatrice had copied the altered number. The original brass tag still identified Jacob as patient 23. More importantly, the crescent-shaped blue stain on its back had formed while the tag rested against his chest. It connected him to the tonic before Beatrice ordered his bed changed. Eleanor looked farther down the page. Bed 23 had been reassigned to a woman named Mary Dunn, who supposedly died after Eleanor withheld treatment. But Mary Dunn had never existed. Eleanor had created that empty name years earlier as a training example for new nurses. It appeared only on an instruction card kept inside the records office. Beatrice had mistaken it for a real patient when constructing her duplicate. Was this ledger copied from the original treatment record? Eleanor asked. Every word, Beatrice replied. And Dr. Vale personally prescribed the tonic listed here? He did. For every patient? Yes. Eleanor closed the book. She now knew how to force Beatrice into a lie the magistrates could test without relying on any burned document. Then I request that tomorrow's trustee hearing proceed publicly, she said. Bring every surviving patient, every bed tag, and Dr. Vale's sealed prescription case. Beatrice's composure returned. Dr. Vale is missing. His case is not. You listed it among the hospital property you inherited from me. Sir Julian ordered the case secured. As the officers left to retrieve it, Eleanor looked at the duplicate ledger and understood Beatrice's fatal mistake. She had forged a physician's work perfectly, but she did not know how Nathaniel Vale recorded a patient he had never examined. By sunrise, Sir Julian had placed the surviving evidence under separate guard. Daniel kept Jacob Bell's brass tag in a sealed envelope signed by Mrs. Finch and Mrs. Wren. Peter Moss's pencil stub was wrapped and witnessed by the constable. The blue bottle remained locked in the magistrate's travelling chest. No witness slept alone, and no hospital servant was permitted to leave without an officer. The public hearing began at 10 inside the Ashcombe Estate Chapel. St. Agnes was too damaged to hold the crowd, and the chapel possessed something the hospital did not, a raised gallery where villagers, nurses, and tenants could watch every word entered into the official record. Beatrice arrived wearing black, as though she were mourning the patients Eleanor had supposedly harmed. Her solicitor addressed the trustees first. He described Eleanor as an ambitious wife who had exceeded the limits of charity, stolen hospital funds, purchased an unsafe tonic, and blamed others when her treatment failed. He displayed the banknotes found beneath her desk and read passages from letters bearing her signature. Then Beatrice placed the duplicate fever ledger on the chapel table. This contains the final work of Dr. Nathaniel Vale, she said. He trusted the Duchess until he discovered what she had done. That is why she caused him to disappear. A murmur passed through the gallery. Eleanor did not answer the accusation immediately. Instead, she asked Daniel to bring forward the sealed envelope. He described receiving the numbered label from Mrs. Wren, folding it inside Jacob's brass tag, and carrying it through the fire. Mrs. Wren confirmed where she had found the label. Mrs. Finch confirmed that it had been tied to the blue bottle taken from St. Agnes. Peter identified the blue number as his own writing. Invoice 47, he said. 3 crates of tonic, delivered before the fever began. Beatrice's solicitor rose. A dismissed clerk's memory is not an account book. No, Eleanor agreed, but the label is hospital paper. She held it toward the chapel window. The Bell watermark appeared within its fibers. Only St. Agnes used this paper. The tonic did not come from a private purchase hidden outside the hospital. It entered through our receiving system and was assigned an invoice before the first patient became ill. Sir Julian examined the watermark, then passed it to the trustees. Beatrice remained calm. That proves only that Eleanor admitted the shipment herself. Then why did you burn invoice 47? I burned contaminated records. You removed that page before the fire. That is Peter Moss's claim. Eleanor nodded. So, let us leave the invoice and examine your ledger. Jacob Bell was carried into the chapel by his father. The boy was weak, but alive. Around his neck hung a replacement cord. Eleanor placed his brass tag beside Beatrice's duplicate. What was Jacob's bed number when he received the tonic? Beatrice glanced at the ledger. 11. His tag says 23. He was moved after he received the tonic. Yet, your supposed copy lists him under bed 11 from the moment of admission. The trustees leaned toward the page. Beatrice replied, the nurse must have corrected the record. Then why does your ledger place Mary Dunn in bed 23? She replaced him. Will you ask Mary Dunn to stand? No one moved. Beatrice looked toward the gallery. She died. No, Mary Dunn was never alive. Silence spread through the chapel. Eleanor explained that the name appeared on a training card used to teach new nurses how to record a patient transfer. It had never appeared in the true fever ledger. You did not copy the original, Eleanor said. You copied loose documents from the records office and constructed a ledger after the first one was burned. Beatrice's solicitor objected, but Sir Julian allowed Eleanor to continue. She called Lucy Hale. Lucy described her brother taking the tonic without suffering from fever. Ben then entered the chapel under his own strength. His survival showed that the blue liquid could produce the same weakness found in the patients, independent of the outbreak. Mrs. Finch presented the treatment basin preserved from the laundry room. Sir Julian's assistant had tested its residue against the blue bottle. Both contained the same mineral compound. The tonic did not create the fever, Eleanor said. It made ordinary cases appear fatal, increasing fear and justifying emergency control of St. Agnes. One trustee looked at Beatrice. Why would anyone wish to control a charitable hospital? Because its trust owns more than beds and medicine, Eleanor replied. It owns the Western Meadow, the riverside warehouses, and the road through which every Bristol shipment enters Ashcombe land. The hospital property had been protected from estate creditors. As permanent governor, Beatrice could grant leases over those warehouses and road rights. Adrian rose. He placed his signed emergency order before the trustees and identified his signature. My sister obtained control because I gave it to her, he said. My wife warned me that the dates did not match. I refused to investigate. Whatever Beatrice intended, my decision opened the door. His admission established Beatrice's access, but Eleanor did not permit him to explain the evidence for her. She turned to the letters found in the chest beneath her desk. These are convincing copies of my handwriting, she said, but each ends with the same phrase. For the relief of Ashcombe's suffering, poor. I have never used that phrase. Beatrice laughed. You expect the trustees to remember every sentence you have written? No, I expect my husband to remember the first person who did. Adrian examined one letter. My father, he said. He used those words in every charitable appeal. The letters had not been copied from Eleanor's correspondence. They had been modelled upon older estate documents stored in the archive. Beatrice could enter freely as the late Duke's daughter. The forged bank order bore the same outdated phrasing. Beatrice's composure finally cracked. You have proved nothing about Dr. Vale, she said. He prescribed the tonic. His seal authorized the shipment. Sir Julian placed Vale's sealed prescription case on the table. Its brass lock was intact. 3 wax impressions from the magistrate secured the cord around it. Eleanor addressed Beatrice. You testified that every prescription in your duplicate was written by Dr. Vale. Yes, and that his seal was used lawfully. Yes, then his case should contain the instrument used to make that seal. Sir Julian cut the cord and opened the lid. Inside lay Vale's surgical tools, prescription paper, sealing wax, and a silver stamp shaped like a crowned shield. One side of the crown was split. It matched the mark pressed into every blue bottle cork found in the cellar. Beatrice stepped backward. Eleanor did not touch the stamp. She pointed instead to a dark substance packed inside its broken edge. If that is ordinary sealing wax, Dr. Vale may have authorized the tonic, she said. But if it is the same blue compound found in the bottles, then someone used his private seal to stamp the corks after he disappeared. Sir Julian's assistant carried the stamp toward the testing table. The entire chapel watched as he scraped a single grain from the broken crown. The grain dissolved in clear water. Within seconds, the liquid turned the same cloudy blue as the tonic in Sir Julian's evidence bottle. No one in the chapel spoke. The silver stamp had not merely sealed Dr. Vale's prescriptions. Its broken edge had been pressed directly into the poisoned corks. Whoever possessed his case after his disappearance had used his identity to make unlicensed medicine appear lawful. Beatrice's solicitor quietly closed his papers. Eleanor faced her sister-in-law. Dr. Vale never prescribed the tonic. You did. I am not a physician. That was your mistake. You copied his name, his seal, and his records, but you did not understand his method. Eleanor opened Vale's prescription pad. Each unused page contained 3 narrow columns: the patient's symptoms before treatment, the dose given, and the reaction afterward. Beatrice's duplicate ledger recorded only diagnoses and doses. Dr. Vale never prescribed for a patient he had not examined, Eleanor said. Nor did he record a medicine without leaving space for its effect. Every entry attributed to him in your ledger was written by someone who knew how a physician's signature looked, but not how he worked. Sir Julian ordered the chapel doors closed. 2 officers entered from the rear gallery. with Mr. Harland between them. He had been captured before dawn while attempting to cross the sealed county road with hospital deeds, blank prescription paper, and a lease granting Bellwether and Sons control of the riverside warehouses. The lease bore Beatrice's signature. The scheme was finally visible in full. A mild autumn fever had provided Beatrice and Harland with their opportunity. They purchased Crown's restorative through Bellwether before the outbreak spread, using Dr. Vale's stolen seal. Repeated doses weakened patients and increased the death count. Fear created the need for emergency authority. Eleanor, whose rules made every bottle traceable, had to be removed before the hospital trust could be seized. The forged theft gave Adrian a reason to disgrace her. His signature gave Beatrice the power to destroy the records. "Where is Dr. Vale?" Eleanor asked. Harland looked toward Beatrice. She said nothing. Sir Julian placed the unsigned warehouse lease beside him. "If the physician is dead, you may answer for murder as well as conspiracy." Harland's courage broke. "Vale is alive," he said. "We kept him in the abandoned toll house near the Western Road. He would not sign the tonic orders. Officers found Dr. Vale before evening. He was starved and badly beaten, but conscious enough to identify Beatrice as the woman who had demanded his seal, and Harland as the man who imprisoned him. Neither confession nor rescue stood alone. The bottle, watermark, brass tag, false patient, mineral residue, stolen stamp, warehouse lease, and witness testimony formed a chain Beatrice could no longer dismiss as Eleanor's invention. Beatrice was charged with poisoning, unlawful confinement, forgery, theft from a charitable trust, destruction of medical records, and conspiracy to obtain protected property. Harland faced the same charges, along with responsibility for locking the nursery cottages and setting the fire in an attempt to destroy the remaining tonic. Bellwether and Sons lost its warehouses and was prosecuted for supplying banned medicine. Adrian was not arrested. His consequence was different. He resigned his county appointment and surrendered all patronage authority over St. Agnes. Before the trustees, tenants, servants, and surviving patients, he withdrew every accusation against Eleanor. "My wife did not steal from this hospital," he said. "She built it, funded it, and protected it. I saw contradictions and chose not to examine them. I valued obedience above her judgment, and innocent people suffered because my name gave power to a lie." He did not call himself Beatrice's victim. He named his own choices. Under a new settlement, Adrian restored the £400, repaid the £1,200 Eleanor had invested from her marriage portion, and transferred the Western Meadow and Riverside income into an independent charitable trust governed by Eleanor and 4 elected trustees. He also provided separate maintenance and a residence beyond Ashcombe land, whether or not she ever returned to him. The repair cost him wealth, influence, and control. It did not purchase forgiveness. 3 months later, St. Agnes reopened. The burned nursery cottages had been rebuilt with wider exits, outdoor water pumps, and locks that could never again be fastened from only one side. Dr. Vale recovered slowly and agreed to serve as consulting physician, but the hospital's daily authority belonged to Eleanor. On the morning the first medicine shipment arrived, every bottle was inspected by 2 people. Peter Moss recorded the invoice. Daniel Price checked the seals. Mrs. Finch matched each bottle to its patient register. Nothing entered St. Agnes under a dead or absent man's name again. Adrian came to the reopening without a title announced before him. The scar across his hand had faded, though not disappeared. He stopped at the courtyard where Beatrice had poured Eleanor's medicines into the mud. "I have written to you every week," he said. "I know. You have answered twice. Twice was what I freely chose." He accepted the words without protest. "I will not ask you to return," he said, "but if there is ever a road back to your trust, I will walk it at the pace you set." Eleanor studied the man she had once loved, and the man whose pride had nearly destroyed everything she built. Remorse had changed him enough to tell the truth. It had not yet changed the past. "We will remain apart," she said. "You may continue writing. I promise nothing beyond reading." Pain crossed his face, followed by something quieter acceptance. "That is more than I have earned." A little girl approached, carrying an empty medicine cup. She had survived both the tonic and the cottage fire. Eleanor took a fresh bottle from the inspected crate, measured the safe dose herself, and placed the cup in the child's hands. Around her waist hung the brass ring of hospital keys. At the opening, those keys had been taken from her, while life-saving medicine disappeared into the mud. Now, Adrian stood outside the hospital gates, while Eleanor turned the key in the main door. She did not look back for his permission. She opened St. Agnes under her own authority, and the people followed her inside.